So one of the easiest things to know about building muscle, at least broadly speaking, is to resistance train, progressively overload, and get adequate protein while being in a relatively small caloric surplus. However, there is one recurring question that people seem to ask. Is there a limit to how much protein you can absorb in one meal? And this is a question that beginners and even some intermediates have. And I don't personally think it's a bad question to ask, since it probably indicates that you want to optimize your nutrition so that, it complements your training. And it's also a good question to ask because the answer may alter or improve your eating habits. So the first thing we need to understand is that absorption and utilization are two different things, even though people tend to ask this question using the two terms interchangeably. However, absorption simply means breaking down the foods that you eat into their basic molecules so that they can be absorbed. So for example, if you ate steak, you wouldn't absorb the protein from that steak immediately. You'd break the protein in that steak down to its simplest form, which are amino acids. It's those amino acids that are then absorbed into the bloodstream and used in muscle protein synthesis, energy provision, or just other areas in the body. Realistically, there's no limit to how much your body can actually absorb. So the real question is, how much protein can you utilize per meal to maximize muscle growth? Well, there's still ongoing research in this area, but current studies proposes that the amount of protein you can use to maximize protein synthesis is somewhere between 0.4 to 0.55 grams per kilogram of body weight over the course of 4 meals throughout the day. Now you might think to yourself, well, I actually heard that we can only use 20 to 30 grams of protein before the rest goes to waste. And honestly, that's just not true. Any additional protein per meal that isn't used in protein synthesis can still be used for energy or other bodily function, because we can't actually store amino acids in our bodies like we can with fats or carbs. Another thing to address is that there have actually been studies that indicate protein intake above 20 to 30 grams per meal to provide greater muscle protein synthesis. Besides, think about the practicality. If you really only could utilize 20 grams of protein, then you'd have to eat 9 meals if your daily protein goal was 180 grams in order to maximize synthesis. It seems many people adopt this all or nothing mindset with protein, and by extension with a lot of concepts in fitness. It's either used or it's wasted, and that's honestly a very inefficient way to think of our bodies. However, given that muscle protein synthesis appears to be maximized at a certain amount relative to each individual, it does suggest that it's in your best interest to aim for 3 to 5 meals that's spaced over the course of the day to maximize protein synthesis, as opposed to eating only 1 to 2 large meals. The way that I interpret it is this: you're not losing muscle, but you might be leaving potential gains on the table. Of course, there is flexibility with this information, and it shouldn't be viewed as a limitation. I know some people might see this information and feel as if their entire eating habits now have to conform to meal frequency, but don't forget that there are still other factors to prioritize. For starters, your total daily protein intake is more important and should be something that you figure out and prioritize first. Additionally, the quality of your protein and its source is also important. So rather than think of meal frequency as a constraint, look at it as something that you can combine as you advance in your training. Topics like protein are controversial by nature and based on how people interpret or prioritize the data. But there are also other factors that affect each individual differently, such as age, training status, and body composition, which is why recommendations on protein intake are usually given as a range rather than a singular number. In the end, things will simply vary somewhat from person to person, and that's just how it is. So to sum it up, all the protein that you consume, whether it's in one sitting or throughout the day, will be absorbed by your body. But there appears to be a threshold where only a certain amount of it is utilized for building muscle. Because of this, it's advised that you consume between 3 to 5 meals per day, which in turn allows you to space out your protein intake to promote the most amount of muscle protein synthesis. However, the most important thing is still first to make sure that you calculate how much protein you should consume in a day and then reach that number. Oh, and the myth about only being able to utilize 20 to 30 grams of protein is largely debunked. Anyway, that's it for today's session. Let me know if you have anything to add down below in the comment section. But if you found this video helpful, please remember to drop a like and consider subscribing. But until then, I'll see you all next time.